In the middle of a brutal snowstorm, three young black boys stopped their bikes to help a stranger stranded on the side of the road. A billionaire, frozen in anger beside his luxury car. They didn't ask for money. They didn't ask for thanks. Just kindness, pure and simple. But what happened next would shake the town, challenge everything he believed about wealth, and reveal the truth about what really makes a person rich. Because sometimes the poorest hearts carry the richest souls. And this time, their act of compassion would change his life forever. That morning, the snow fell harder than anyone expected. The Montana sky was a blur of white, swallowing the horizon in silence. Inside a sleek black Rolls-Royce, Vivian Clark, one of the country's most powerful billionaires, tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Her schedule didn't allow mistakes, not even nature's interruptions. She had a meeting in Denver, a $2.4 billion deal that would define her legacy. But miles from the city, on an empty back road, fate decided otherwise. A loud pop cut through the hum of the storm. The car jerked, sliding sideways before coming to a halt on the shoulder. A flat tire. In an instant, her confidence shattered. Vivian had built empires, managed thousands of employees, and negotiated with the most ruthless investors in the world. But now she stood helpless, staring at a wheel sinking into the snow. Her phone had no signal. Her assistant wasn't answering. For the first time in years, she was alone. Snowflakes clung to her expensive coat, melting into her skin. The cold bit through the layers of luxury that had always protected her from the real world. Vivian opened the trunk, staring at the untouched emergency kit. She had never changed a tire in her life. Why would she? She paid people for that. People who worked, served, waited. But today, there was no one to call, no one to command. Only silence, snow, and the cruel reminder that money meant nothing here. As she struggled with the tools, her gloved hands trembling from the cold, a thought crept into her mind. A truth she'd long ignored. For all her power, for all her wealth, she couldn't buy her way out of this moment. And just as she began to lose hope, faint laughter echoed through the storm. The laughter drew closer, soft, warm, and completely out of place in that frozen world. Through the blinding snow, Vivian Clark saw three young black boys pedaling toward her, their bicycles wobbling on the icy road. Their coats were torn, faces red from the cold, but their spirits seemed untouched by the storm. For a moment, Vivian stared, uncertain whether to feel relief or disbelief. These boys, barely teenagers, stopped beside her luxury car, a shining Rolls-Royce Phantom that looked like it belonged to another planet. One of them, the tallest, brushed snow from his eyelashes and asked if she needed help. His tone was respectful but cautious, the kind of caution learned too young, the kind that comes from knowing how the world looks at you. Vivian hesitated. Her instinct, polished by years of privilege, whispered not to trust strangers. But she was out of options. "The tire's flat," she said softly. The boys glanced at each other, then at the car. One whistled under his breath. "That's a nice car," he murmured. Another nudged him, signaling him to stay quiet. Within minutes, they got to work. The smallest boy held the jack steady while the others loosened the bolts with bare hands. Their breath rose in white clouds, and their fingers trembled from the cold, yet not a single complaint escaped their lips. Vivian stood by, watching, ashamed that she couldn't even name half the tools they were using. Every now and then, a passing truck slowed down, drivers staring at the sight. Three black boys crouched beside a billionaire white woman's car. One driver honked, rolled down his window, and shouted something muffled by the wind. She didn't catch the words, but she saw the sneer. The boys didn't react. They just kept working, pretending they hadn't heard. But she did, and it burned. When they finally finished, the tall one, Malik, wiped his hands on his jacket. "You're good to go, ma'am." His voice was steady, mature beyond his years. Vivian's hand shook as she reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out a wad of cash, 5 crisp $100 bills, and held them toward him. "Take this," she said, her voice tight with gratitude. But Malik shook his head. "No, thank you, ma'am." Vivian blinked, confused. "What do you mean, no?" He looked her in the eye, his expression calm, almost proud. "We don't help people for money." For a moment, the storm seemed to go silent. The snow fell softer, the wind eased. Vivian stared at these boys, their worn shoes, frost-bitten fingers, and eyes that carried both struggle and strength. She didn't understand. In her world, everything was a transaction. Everything had a price. "Please," she said, her voice cracking. "You've helped me more than you know." Malik shook his head again. "My father taught me that kindness isn't something you sell. It's something you give." Something inside Vivian shifted. Those words cut deeper than she expected. For the first time in years, she felt small. Not because of money or power, but because she realized how hollow her life had become. The boys got back on their bikes. She wanted to stop them, to say something meaningful, but her throat felt tight. They waved goodbye and pedaled away, their laughter echoing faintly through the storm until it vanished into the white. Vivian stood there, staring at the road long after they were gone. Her gloved hand still held the money, crumpled now, useless. The wind picked up again, howling through the empty landscape. But this time it didn't feel cold. It felt like awakening, the kind that hurts before it heals. As she climbed back into her car, a single thought echoed in her mind, refusing to fade. They had nothing, and somehow they had everything I'd lost. And in that moment, she didn't know it yet, but those 3 boys had just changed her life forever. By the time Vivian reached Denver, the snow had stopped, but something inside her hadn't. The city lights glittered across the skyline, sharp and distant, just like her world. She parked the Rolls-Royce in the underground garage of a glass tower and stepped into her meeting. The boardroom was warm, sleek, and full of people who spoke in numbers, not feelings. They congratulated her. Her deal was historic. Billions exchanged hands in contracts and signatures. Cameras flashed. Champagne glasses clinked. But none of it meant anything. The laughter of those 3 boys, the ones who had helped her without hesitation, still echoed in her head. Later that night, as Vivian drove back toward her penthouse, something caught her eye. On a dimly lit street corner, 2 of those same boys were standing. This time, not laughing. A police cruiser's red and blue lights flashed over them. The officers were questioning them, hands on their belts, faces hard and suspicious. Vivian slowed down, her chest tightening. She could hear the tone, the same one she'd ignored her entire life. One officer barked a command. The boys raised their hands. Their bikes lay in the snow, half crushed under the patrol car's bumper. Vivian's pulse pounded. These were the same kids who'd refused her money, who'd saved her without asking for a thing. And now they were being treated like criminals, for existing, for being young, for being black. She stepped out of her car. The officer turned toward her, ready to shout, until he saw her clothes, her posture, her wealth. His tone changed instantly. "Ma'am, please stay back. We've got it handled." Vivian's voice trembled but didn't break. "No," she said. "You don't?" The air froze. Even the snow seemed to stop falling. In that moment, Vivian Clark, the billionaire who once measured her worth in dollars, realized what real poverty looked like. It wasn't lack of money. It was the lack of humanity. And as she stood between those boys and the flashing lights, she knew one thing for certain. This was the first fight in her life that truly mattered. The officers backed off after realizing who she was, a woman of power, a name that carried weight. Their posture softened instantly, but Vivian saw it, the same double standard that kept the world unbalanced. Those boys weren't safe because the truth had changed. They were safe because she'd stepped in. That thought burned deeper than the cold. She stayed with them until the lights faded and the cruiser drove away. The boys were shaken but silent. Malik thanked her quietly, his voice small against the night. "We're used to it," he said, and that broke something in her, the casual acceptance of injustice, spoken by a child. That night, Vivian couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed every second. Their laughter in the snow, their refusal to take her money, the fear in their eyes beneath flashing red and blue lights. She had built towers, companies, and empires, but she had never built something that truly mattered. Until now. A week later, a new convoy rolled into the boys' neighborhood. Not police cars, but trucks filled with warmth, food, and opportunity. Vivian founded a program in their name, the Davis Youth Initiative, dedicated to helping Black kids in forgotten towns, giving them safety, education, and dignity. When she returned to visit, Malik looked up at her with disbelief. "You really did this?" he asked. Vivian smiled softly. "No," she said. "You did." For the first time, she understood what true wealth meant. Not the kind that fills bank accounts, but the kind that fills hearts. The kind that refuses to stay silent in the face of injustice, because racism doesn't always wear a uniform or carry a badge. Sometimes it hides in silence, in the people who turn away instead of standing up. And as Vivian looked at those three boys, she realized something simple yet eternal. Kindness is powerful, but courage to act when it matters, changes the world. If this story touched your heart, comment your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe to Black Community Struggles for more real stories that open eyes, touch hearts, and spark change. So ask yourself, if you saw injustice in front of you today, would you walk away? Or would you take a stand, even if it wasn't your fight?